Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, the podcast where we cut through the noise, skip the corporate jargon, and get real about what actually drives results. Because let's be honest, hope is not a business strategy. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy. After 40 plus years across the military, corporate America, and now entrepreneurship, I've seen what works, what breaks, and why leadership, planning, and execution are the great separators between average and exceptional results. As you're catching the replay, send your thoughts or challenges directly to me at chuck@1310.com, chuck@13ten.com. Your time matters, so let's jump straight into today's topic. The 50% growth fantasy. Why big goals blow up when no one asks the obvious questions. Silence is not agreement. It's a warning sign. A while back, I sat in a meeting where a brand new head of sales proudly declared, I want to increase sales by 50% in 18 months. And before I could even blink, before anyone could ask what planet she planned to import that volume from, the owner was ecstatic. Finance? Silent. Merchandising? Quiet as a church mouse. HR? Not even a twitch. And operations? You'd think they were on mute. Everyone just sat there, nodding like this enormous organization-wide explosion of demand would magically fit into the existing cost structure, tools, processes, and people. And in that moment, I realized something. Ambition isn't the problem. Silence is. Because silence is how companies blow themselves up. Today, we're going to talk about the dangerous fantasy of aggressive growth without cross-functional planning and how real leaders stop the madness before it destroys margins, morale, and credibility. We're going to break this down using the same framework I teach leaders everywhere. Let's start with the biggest problem, move on to the biggest symptom. Then we'll talk about what most people try and do and why that rarely works. And then we'll finish off with the one thing that actually moves the needle. So let's get into it. The biggest problem, goals without infrastructure, are just fantasies. The biggest problem isn't setting a big goal. Big goals are great. Ambition drives innovation. Stretch targets make companies sharper. The real problem is this. Organizations treat massive growth goals as isolated decisions instead of enterprise-wide commitments that require data, cross-functional analysis, and operational reality. Sales says, we're going to grow 50%, and leadership claps. Everyone else quietly panics. But they panic internally because culturally the message has been, don't be the person who slows things down with questions. Here's the truth. A 50% increase in sales is not a sales goal. It's a company-wide transformation initiative. It impacts finance, cash flow, pricing strategy, capital allocation, HR, hiring curves, training, retention risk. Definitely operations, production capacity, throughput, tack time, space, equipment, supply chain, vendor capacity, lead times, risk buffers, merchandising or R&D, product roadmap, and potentially SKU proliferation. Customer service, support volumes, and after-sales burdens. IT, systems capacities and integrations. And facilities, physical flow, and warehouse footprints. Yet, most organizations treat that kind of statement like it's a PowerPoint bullet. The counterintuitive reality? Big goals don't fail during execution. They fail in the meeting where no one asked the right questions. Yeah, I've watched companies set targets so disconnected from reality, they might as well have announced they were colonizing Mars. Additional challenge, cultures that confuse alignment with agreement. You'd think professionals would ask questions, but they don't always. Why? Because the culture has taught them that asking questions equals negativity. Raising constraints equals being difficult. Highlighting risks equals slowing down momentum. Providing data equals not being a team player. And telling the truth can be a career-limiting move. So instead, everyone smiles, everyone nods, and then walks out wondering how much damage control they'll be doing in 6 months. So what's the biggest symptom? Everyone is busy, but no one is aligned. When a company makes massive commitments without cross-functional planning, the biggest symptom is painfully obvious. Execution becomes chaotic because every department is making up its own version of the plan. Sales thinks capacity will magically absorb the increase. Finance forecasts based on last year's headcount. HR tries to hire reactively instead of proactively. Operations, they continue to pull overtime levers until people burn out. Merchandising panics when lead times start slipping. Supply chain, they get blindsided by sudden spikes in volume. Everyone is rowing, sure, but they're rowing in different directions at different speeds using different maps. And the result? Operational friction, blown margins, exhausted teams, and frustrated customers. Let me give you a real number to illustrate. According to McKinsey, companies waste 20 to 30% of their potential revenue every year because of misalignment, unclear priorities, and poor cross-functional planning. I've seen this firsthand. At one company, they had 1 year where sales wanted a high-volume product line ramped up in 90 days, except for one thing: the equipment to make it didn't exist yet. Not metaphorically, literally. The machines weren't built, shipped, installed, or tested. Meanwhile, sales was already promising dates to retailers. In this case, they pulled it off, but only because a lot of good people worked unreasonable hours, pushed temporary processes, and took extraordinary measures. It cost money, sleep, and probably in some cases sanity. Why? Because someone said yes before asking the right questions. So what do most people try and do? The classic, just work harder fix. When the goal is unrealistic or unsupported, here's what leaders usually try. They try to push the existing system harder instead of redesigning the system. This ends up looking like added overtime, hiring reactively, throwing bodies at the problem, cutting corners, speeding up production with no process redesign, piling more projects onto already overloaded teams, all hands on deck for months, rushing vendors and damaging partnerships, and juggling priorities like a circus act. This Band-Aid approach works for about 6 weeks. Then the wheels fall off. So why do companies default to this bad situation? Well, it feels fast. It feels heroic. It avoids uncomfortable conversations. It doesn't require confronting capacity limits. It allows leaders to save face in front of ownership. It's the corporate version of flooring a minivan on a highway hill and pretending the transmission won't eventually explode. So, why does that rarely work? The system always wins. Organizations fail not because they lack ambition, but because they lack capacity, clarity, and coordination. So, why do these common fixes fail? Because you can't achieve nonlinear growth with linear effort. The system will always break before the goal does. Here's why the work harder strategy collapses. Physical capacity has hard limits. You can only run machines so fast, push a shift so long, hire so many people, store so much product, scale with existing space so far. Then there's the human capacity, which has even harder limits. Overtime fatigue, absenteeism climbs by 50 or 60% when overtime exceeds 20% of total hours. Burnout, productivity drops 20 to 40% before people quit. What about vendors? Vendors can't magically expand. Most organizations never ask their suppliers if they can scale 50% in 18 months. Newsflash, they usually can't. What about lead times? Well, they expand, not contract. Growth equals more volume. More volume equals more bottlenecks. More bottlenecks equals more WIP. More WIP equals longer cycle times. Longer cycle times equal missed commitments. And missed commitments, as we all know, equal unhappy customers. Cross-functional assumptions literally explode. Sales assumes operations can handle it. Operation assumes sales overpromise. Again. Finance wonders why margins are shrinking. HR can't find the people fast enough. Merchandising can't get product changes aligned. And IT is still trying to catch up to last year's software needs. The entire system buckles under the pressure of ambition without architecture. So here's the counterintuitive truth. Companies don't fail because they aim high. They fail because they refuse to ask, what will this require? So what's the one thing that actually does work? Build a cross-functional reality map before making big commitments. Here's what separates high-performing organizations from the ones that crash like a third-hand Honda with 300,000 miles and no oil. Before accepting a major growth target, the entire leadership team must build a shared, data-backed, cross-functional reality map. This is not a meeting. This is a process. The reality map answers 8 questions. What exact volume increase are we targeting? By SKU, channel, customer, and product family. 2. What is the capacity of our current system? Shift structure, equipment throughput, constraints, seasonality, WIP flows, and cycle time. 3. What is the gap between today's capacity and the target capacity? 4. What resources does each area need to support that gap? People, training, equipment, space, systems, vendors. 5. What is the cash flow impact? Investment versus return. Working capital. Inventory implications. Margin impact. 6. What is the risk of doing this? And the risk of not doing it? 7. What is the timeline based on real constraints, not wishful thinking? 8. Who owns what? And what is the sequence of actions? This reality map becomes the operational, financial, and strategic truth that everyone aligns on. It also prevents the fantasy scenario. Someone announces a huge goal, everyone nods, no one asks questions, and 6 months later the whole organization is duct taped together with heroics and apologies. Here's a quick story. When I ran an $80 million plywood cutting facility in Mississippi, we once faced a major demand increase for a new product category. Sales wanted to ramp up fast, like yesterday if possible. But here's the difference. Instead of cheering, the team asked the right questions. What's the throughput required? What's the router capacity today? Do the jigs exist? What's the lead time for new tooling? Do we have enough forklift capacity to handle material flow? Has R&D finalized the specs? Will the new SKUs wreck existing changeover timing? That questioning saved us from a catastrophic launch. It also helped us deliver the product successfully. Asking questions isn't negativity. It's leadership. So how do we make this work in your organization? Here's the practical version that you can implement tomorrow. Step 1, create a growth impact checklist. Whenever a major goal is presented, every leader answers, what's the operational impact? What's the financial impact? What's the people impact? What's the supply chain impact? What's the product impact? What's the system impact? And what's the timing impact? This forces everyone to evaluate and not cheerlead. Step 2, require a 360-degree feasibility review before committing. No exceptions. No, we'll figure it out later. Step 3, build a cross-functional OGSI plan. Objectives, goals, strategies, and initiatives. Each department aligns vertically as well as horizontally. Step 4, establish a single owner for the growth ramp. Not a committee, not a board. One accountable leader with the authority and alignment. Step 5, set realistic pacing. A 50% increase in 18 months might be possible, but not without additional equipment or additional people or process redesign or vendor alignment or an inventory strategy or cash flow modeling. You cannot power your way to this result. So in conclusion, courage is asking the questions no one wants to ask. When the head of sales said she wanted a 50% increase in 18 months, she wasn't wrong to be ambitious. The failure was the room, the silence, the lack of curiosity, the absence of operational reality, the complete unwillingness to consider the company-wide impact. Great organizations ask questions. Great leaders challenge assumptions. Great teams align before committing. And great results come from ambition built on architecture, not adrenaline. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Unsolicited Feedback. Thanks for joining me, but don't just nod along. Apply something from today's conversation. Because results don't show up just from listening. They show up because you did something. Even one small action this week will move the needle farther than a month of good intentions. If you want to go deeper, scan the QR code or schedule a 30-minute strategy chat. I'd love to hear how you're using planning, leadership, and execution to make sure hope never becomes your business strategy. Drop a comment and like the episode. I'm Chuck Knabusch. Until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't you dare rely on hope.